everybody. Happy Wednesday lunch. Here we are in my lonely treatment room. We're going to talk about kidneys. So the first, um, the first time, the, oh, Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I got all crazy because something popped up on the computer. I'm so not computer oriented. All right, so let's talk about kidneys. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually talk about function a little bit before I actually get to like where they are and their location and that stuff, and then the dysfunction that happens from them. Okay, so first of all, kidneys are kind of interesting because kidneys are one of the there's five main detox organs or detox ways in the body. So of course we have liver and lungs, and we have bowel, we have kidneys, and we have skin. Kidney, bladder, and we have skin. So it's one of the five big detox organs. So one of the really interesting things that I actually learned it in this last year. So please know that you can always learn new things. So one of the things I learned is if your liver is not doing well, which is much more common than people actually think. It's much more common that the liver has some congestion and that it isn't detoxing as well as it should. Or you can have some genetic people with some genes that actually are not working well. And what it does is it inhibits the phases of detox of the liver that then goes, and what happens is that the liver is now asking the kidneys to go ahead and do the extra detoxing. So that's much more stress on the kidneys. Much, much, much more stress. Another little functional piece about the kidneys is the fact that 60%, I want you to get this, guys, 60% of your blood goes through your kidneys every minute. Every minute. And so what that means is that your kidneys, if there's stress in them or overtension in them, what it can do is create high blood pressure. So when I have a client that comes in, when I've taken their history, and part of the history is that they have high blood pressure, or they're on high blood pressure medications, and so forth, then what I'm thinking is I need to check their kidneys, because that's from a body work standpoint, that's where we want to go. Okay, we want to know how the kidneys are. Okay, so those are two really interesting kind of things about the function of the kidneys. I don't need to say that the blood goes in it and that there's all these nephrons in there that are separating out the what becomes the urine from the blood. We don't need all that. But from a standpoint, a bodywork standpoint, what can create more dysfunction, that's where we're going. So let me do this. Let me grab my book here and show you a little picture of the kidneys. I can never get this right, how I hold this, which page, because it's always reversed. So here, hi, here are your kidneys. I got to look at the picture. Here's your kidneys, obviously. And what happens is that notice that your adrenal glands are living on your kidneys, guys. Your adrenals are living on your kidneys. The left kidney is higher than the right kidney. The right kidney is a little bit lower, partially because it's a halfway part. On the right one, it's part of it, I can't get it right here. Part of it is actually underneath your liver. So what's happening is that you have a higher kidney and a lower kidney, which is just fine. But the part that we're really super interested in on those kidneys is they're definitely on the back wall. That is what's happening. They're against the back wall. The other thing that's happening is that your respiratory diaphragm, it's tucked into the back side of your respiratory diaphragm. So this picture comes into play to show you how far into the back of your, you can't actually see it because there's a dotted line over there, which is just fine. But the other piece that I want to say about the kidneys, and we're going to see if this book will show it to you. I pulled open another book here, is in, let me get this in fairly close. Whoops. Okay. So what's happening here, it's showing you the two kidneys, right? I can't do this. It's showing you the two kidneys. But what it's also showing you is all of this in the background, I got to get this correct for you, is I got to look so I can see what I'm doing. This is your psoas muscle. Whoops, I'm not doing this well. Your psoas muscle, okay? This is your hip flexor. It really shows it which side. This is your hip flexor muscle, guys, that your kidneys are living on. Both of your kidneys are living on your hip flexor. So let me do a little dealy bop here. So here's your respiratory diaphragm, right? And your kidneys are tucked into the back of your respiratory diaphragm. No, the left is not bigger, it's just higher. I just can't draw. So, but what's happening here is that these are on the back wall, and what they're doing is basically they're living on your hip flexor, okay? Your hip flexors. Hip flexors. So what does my hip flexor do? It actually lifts my leg up, as I'm doing right now, and it bends me forward from the tops of my legs. So the hip flexor does those two things. So you know that the kidneys are living here on the hip flexor and tucked in the back side of your respiratory diaphragm. So that has location. But remember what I've been saying all along, and what I also have shared. I've just shared it so many times. Everything in the body is surrounded by fascia. So one of the deals is that the fascia around the kidneys is called the renal fascia. And the renal fascia, of course, being surrounding the kidney. If the kidney is having trouble, then what's going to happen is that thank you, Yana, is that if the kidney is having trouble or has tension, then what's happening is the renal fascia begins to change, okay? So it begins to actually, so let me describe this for a second here about fascia. When fascia's natural healthy state is a semi-viscous state, okay, meaning it's a little bit fluid. But when it goes into dysfunction, it actually starts to get crystallized. So it goes crystalline. And one of the things about crystalline fascia is that it sticks to whoever its neighbor is. And you know, I've said this a million times because it happens all over the body. So here we have the kidney, the renal fascia. If there's dysfunction in the kidney or the adrenal, then what it will do is do that to the fascia, and it now sticks to your hip flexor. So your hip flexor now will begin, because of its neighbor, the kidney, my hip flexor will begin to tighten. Okay, so the fascia in the hip flexor starts changing first, and then the hip flexor itself changes. So where does this go here? My hip flexor merges into the muscles of my hips, right? It merges into the muscles of my hips. So what happens is the tension comes down and actually goes in and tightens the muscles that are inside the hips. So, hey, Laura, can you grab me the spine? So anyway, so great. I just need the spine. So here is your hips. So my hip flexors are coming down inside my hips here. But the other thing that it does is it attaches inside here. So what it also does is actually pull on your SI joint. This is your SI joint in here, your sacroiliac joint. So it pulls on the sacroiliac joint. So anyway, so what happens here is, I have to do this, guys. I apologize. Somebody just commented on something, and there we go. Now I can see. is that, so it also pulls in the SI joint. But the interesting thing is that not only does kidney tension come into the hip, but what it does is goes through the fascia in the groin and starts to tighten the inside of the leg. So you have this fascial continuity that happens through the hip and down inside the leg, down to the knee, and all the way down to your foot. So, okay, kidney tension is now creating tension to your hip flexor and the fascias, and it's going down into my hip, tightening my hip, maybe giving me pain in my SI joint, going down the inside of my leg, and possibly creating pain in my knee. So it can also go all the way down and pull your feet so they pronate, so the insides of your feet lose the arch. So you have a lot of opportunity here with tension in the kidney for it to come down and create a lot of soft tissue tension. Okay, so that's the soft tissue part of this. So now one of the things we want to look at is the diaphragm, and when the kidney's sitting just inside the back of the diaphragm, it will create tension in your respiratory diaphragm. When it creates tension in the respiratory diaphragm, what ends up happening is not the same thing. So I sort of always teach this, that going down from the kidneys, you get soft tissue pain. Okay, you get pain patterns in soft tissue that way. Going above your diaphragm, right, above the diaphragm, what happens is that the kidneys now, putting tension into the respiratory diaphragm, create an increased pressure. So you have pressure things going up. That's what happens. So if my kidneys are tight, I can get pressure and it starts to raise, my shoulders so I can get aching. You don't tend to get a direct pain pattern going up that way as much as you do going down. But I'll say this, is that what is pressurized on the upper part of my body? My inner ear. So what can happen is if I have somebody who's got vertigo or who's dizzy or who has inner ear pressure, one of the things I want to do is I want to go and see what's happening in their kidneys, because the kidneys are actually producing this pressure going up. And it may or may not be a contributing factor, but I want to eliminate it as a contributing factor, okay? So what else is actually up here? Like what else is pressurized up here? My eyes. So one of the things I want to do is I want to make sure that there's no kidney pressure actually going up if I've got somebody with eye pressure. So there's a very intimate relationship between what's happening in my kidneys, right? And how it's creating this pressure going up. So I will also say that what is also going on is that when there's tension in the kidneys and it creates tension in the respiratory diaphragm, what is another big symptom is that you cannot take a deep breath, because your kidneys are the most movable organs in your body. They are designed to slide actually kind of on your psoas, on your hip flexor muscles. They're designed to do that. So what happens is that if these guys are stuck, there's no going down of the kidneys when I take my breath. When you take a breath, the actual healthy movement of your respiratory diaphragm is to descend and open like this, okay? It's to descend. So that's why when you take a deep breath, your organs come forward on your abdomen, in your abdomen. So anyway, that's another way that you can tell that something, and a lot of the time when you can't take a deep breath in, is the kidneys. Sometimes it's the other organs that are here, subdiaphragmatic organs, but kidneys seem to be a very big contributor. So anyway, that is your little teeny kidney lesson today. And I'll have to think about what I'm going to talk about next Wednesday, but I'll definitely post it. Or if you have any ideas, if you have any thoughts or ideas about what you'd like to hear about, please, I will definitely entertain them. I appreciate everybody listening, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Ooh, I wanted to say something about